Hello, everybody. It's Gary Dennis, your candidate for Richland 2 School Board, and we are going to dive in to go over the April 9th, 2024 school board meeting recap. So there's a lot to unpack in this, and just be mindful, I shoot these in one continuous, I don't stop and all that. So if the doorbell rings because I'm expecting a package, you'll probably hear my dog go crazy because she probably thinks it's a Chewy box. So let's just dive in right quick. They called the meeting to order. They went into executive session, then they came back out. They had the inspirational moment. In the executive session, though, they did talk about the the admission request districts to the district's adult education program. They also did legal advice with litigation, contractual matter for transfer of property, and employment recommendations and certified releases. Okay, and then they started the inspirational moment. Once they got to that, they got into public participation. They had one speaker. Well, they had two signed up. Only one spoke. And then they went into voting on executive items, and they did the student appeals. They did the student administration or admission request to the district's adult education program, the contractual matter regarding transfer of property. And that one, just to let you know, the recommended action was I move to approve the amendment to deed restrictions between Stern Two Notch Properties Incorporated and Richland County School District 2 pursuant to the deed recorded December 31st, 1997 in Book 1426, page 0378 in the Office of Richland County Register of Deeds. And basically that is, and here's why they did that. They are approving a donation of real property held by Richland 2, consisting of 0.37 acres at the corner of Blythewood Road and Muller Road to Richland County for a widening project. So that's a good thing. That's going to help with safety of schools. So that was a unanimous yes. And then they went into the certified releases, and then they moved into a section 8.1, which new business action requested was a proposed letter to legislators regarding the competency-based instruction. Now, in my last video I talked about the legislation. Hey, if you guys hear me out there, let's get rid of this 10-day archaic missing school thing. And they did. And from my understanding, it still has to be signed by the governor, but it made it through. It's just got to be signed by the governor. So congrats to the State House for that. I really like that, because if you got kids that are doing what they need to do and they get sick with the flu, or they catch COVID, or they get in a bad accident, and they got to miss a few days, and they get over those 5 days in those block classes or the 10 days in those year-long classes, that poses a huge deal and risk to them to not be able to graduate in the high school, and in some case, middle schoolers that are taking high school classes. So congrats to the state on fixing that. Now, I know it doesn't help right now, but next year it should help a lot. So moving on to that, though, they did a letter. And the letter was done by the Richland 2 Board of Trustees, Board Legislation Contact, which is LaShonda McFadden, and she chairs the Legislative Committee. Now, there was a lot of back and forth on this. Some wanted to do it, some didn't. And ultimately, it got voted down. But it took almost 30-some minutes to talk about this, which to me is highly problematic, because that means the board doesn't understand, and this will be hit on later on in the video. The board doesn't fully understand what they can and cannot do. And it's not saying that one person's wrong, one person's right, or they're doing stuff illegally. They're trying to do what's best for the community and what's best for the kids, and keep those good relationships up at the State House. However, I highly suggest that any thing like this, I think it can come from an individual board member. I don't think it has to be voted on by the whole thing unless the chair comes up with something or this letter that they all need to send. A letter like this, it highlights the good things out of that bill, and it lets those people at the State House know thank you. But at the same time, it took a lot of time out of a meeting that was already going to run long. So, it did get voted down. The only two to vote to send it on was, let's see, go to all motions. The motion failed. The only two people that did say, yes, let's send it was Joe Trapp and LaShonda McFadden. But there were some other motions that swayed it, because the original motion was made by LaShonda McFadden. I moved to direct administration to send this letter to the South Carolina Education Public Works Committee. Motion was made by LaShonda McFadden and seconded by Angela Nash. Now, overall, Angela voted no, and there's a good reason why. Because there was another secondary motion made. I moved the board to send the letter back to the committee for spelling and formatting revisions. And that was motion was done by Nikki Porter and seconded by Angela Nash. That motion did fail. Only Angela, LaShonda, and Nikki Porter voted yes. Joe Trapp, Tamika Washington, Lindsay Agostini, and Monica Scott voted no on that. And also, there was another motion to add the board chairman, which normally if a letter comes out, the board chairman should be signing for everybody. So that motion was made by Joe Trapp and seconded by LaShonda McFadden. That motion failed with the 3 votes for yes was Joe Trapp, Angela Nash, and LaShonda McFadden, and then Tamika Washington, Lindsay Agostini, Monica Scott voted no, and Nikki Porter abstained from it. I'm not a fan of abstain voting, but I understand why some people do it. I think that this board needs to come to a better consensus of how to abstain. Because if you all got all the information, it should just be a yes or no vote. Abstaining would mean you would have something to do with it, i.e. you're part of a company that could be receiving money, or you sit on a board of something else that's not privy in Richland to that this is going to. That would be one of the reasons to me to abstain, based on prior experiences in different government positions. So that failed. And then next they received a legislation update. Now this legislation update, good Lord, it was a long one. The crossover deadline was yesterday, so that means anything that hasn't been sent to another chamber, pretty much technically anything that has not been voted on from the House to send to the Senate is probably not going to do it. It's probably going to be dead and not happen. So signed into law, they did the Senate Bill S-245 as booster clubs, the House Bill 3309 Seizure Safe Schools Act, and I'm going to talk about that one, and then House Bill 3309 Competency-Based Education, which we talked about. That's that letter, and thank goodness for them doing that. And then S-418 Read to Succeed 2.0. But the Seizure Safe School Act, House Bill 3309. Let's just touch on that real quick. That is a good thing, because there are students that come to our schools that are very healthy and can do anything, but let's say they might have seizures, and there needs to be a documented plan on how to help those students. Because, if a seizure happens and you're out in public and you come upon it, you do your best to help. Especially with training that I received in the military, you do your best to help. However, if it's a seizure brought on something by a known cause, and you can have that on board in that school so that people know, hey, if it's this student, this is what needs to be done. That is a huge thing. Now, Richland 2 already does that, so we got a good thing going there. But now it brings everybody in the state on board, and I don't see why anybody would oppose that, so congrats on that. And then the competency-based education, basically now it's up to the school district based on competency to pass these students. Going down through there, Read to Succeed 2.0, there's a comprehensive review. If you guys go to the agenda, you can go to the slide and you can get the whole review of it. But it does eliminate recertification requirements. The requirement for science of reading, the prohibition on 3Q as primary method used in instructional materials. I mean, there's a lot that went into that, and when you read more about it, it gets very in-depth. But that's more on a state side than Richland 2, so we're not going to go too deep into that. Now, what did make the crossover is House Bill 4280. That's the Educator Assistance Act. House Bill 4700. That's the social media. That's a key one. The Senate Bill 125. That's the lottery enhancement scholarships. House Bill 5164, the educational scholarships accounts, and House Bill 3728 is the Transparency and Integrity in Education Act, and that's a conference committee. The social media one, my thing is with social media is, and this is my view on social media. You have Facebook, you have X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all that jazz out there. And there's plenty of other ones out there also. To me, kids should not be on social media at all. The only social media that we have in our family is my wife and my social media accounts, specifically my social media accounts for school board and the stuff I do politically, my business, my real estate, social media, and then my personal word, that's friends and family, so they can see my family grow because, my family is stretched between North Carolina and Florida. So when they are not available to be around us and we post pictures, that gets to see it, and our friends can also see what's going on with our children, vice versa. However, the only other social media, we do have a Messenger Kids, which is very, very controversial. Now, I believe that the way we have it set up is the best way. So we have to approve everybody that comes on that list. So we don't just approve just a friend in school. We approve it with their friend that they play with. And only my daughter has it. So we get in contact with those parents. They send the request via, and we're on the phone with them. Did you send the request? Yes. Is this what it looks like? We're FaceTiming or whatever you want to call. Yes, yes, yes. And then we allow it. And then we monitor that. So our daughter can only use that in the presence of us. And when we're not around, those are locked out, and I can turn off the internet just like that so that they can't use it to contact anybody. So that's a good thing. But it does allow her to have her social parts out of class, and since we're in gymnastics and baseball and all that, it allows her to talk to her friends, especially during spring break and things like that when they're not together. But I don't believe a child should have a social media account. I don't even believe a child age of 16 should have one. I wholeheartedly believe that, if they have a cell phone, that's what they're doing, but you need to definitely look at that. You need to install the parental programs. You need to look over all that. And it's not making a thing like a jail, but what it's doing is making sure you as a parent or as a guardian knows what's going on with your kids so they don't get sucked into this other stuff such as sex trafficking, drugs, all that crazy stuff. There's child predators, because that's all out there. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not on my list of good things. That's, if I could find a way to get rid of all that, I would. But, there's legal channels for that, and people are working hard for that. Our Attorney General, Alan Wilson, he's been hot and heavy on that, child sex trafficking stuff. So they've done a lot towards that. So that's a good thing. And I'm not going to waste any more time on that. But I believe once the kids turn 18, then they can do whatever they want to because they're considered adults. I believe they can have a social media account and go from there. So I am on board with that social media bill, but I'm also not on board with it. I really think parents need to step up and do more for their kids. Because some just think, oh, well, my kid would never do that. It can happen. Okay, it can happen. And And I'm one of those parents that said, no, that's never going to happen to my kid. But it can happen, and that's why I watch it extensively. That's why my wife watches it extensively. So they also went into potential impacts for House Bill 5164. That's the educational scholarship accounts. And they talked about how the number of students and how much it's going to be. So in 24-25, the estimated maximum scholarship fund is around $30 million. And then it goes to 65, a little over 65 million, then 105, almost 106 million in 26-27. And then there's no 27-28 is dependent upon funding. So you got to go there. So they're expecting, 5,000 students, then 10,000, then 15,000, and it steps up every time. So, if they get to 185,000 kids trying to do this, that's $1.8 billion annually. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. The Transparency Act, they talked about that. And that's pretty much kind of it. And they did hit on the state budget. So March 12th through the 14th was the passage of the House of Representatives for the General Appropriations Act. The Senate Finance Committee was April 9th through the 11th. April 23rd through 25th, that's the full Senate debate. And then April 9th is the Sendai. And then to be announced vetoes and final passage comes after that. So that means they will be coming back into session. Even when the official session ends, they'll be coming back into session to finish that up. They also talked about K-12 budget, and then they talked about the minimum state salary. So the good thing is Richland 2 is above the minimum state salary. The bad thing is other school districts are going to get there, but that's also a good thing for the teachers. But now that's going to also hinder Richland 2 to attract those teachers based on that. So that means we're going to have to up our offering to do that. And, there's different schedules and different things like that. So basically, from my understanding, the existing schedule, if you have a bachelor's degree with certified to teach, you make $42,500 a year. The new one will be $47,000 a year. Okay. And that's with 0 years of experience. So when you get down to 23 years of experience with just the bachelor's, you make $56,589. At 23 years my dog's snoring. Wake up, Daisy. Wake up. Stop snoring. Okay, so year 23 on the new one, just the bachelor's, they're going to make $59,000 equal. That's one of those things that's at the state level, and we have to watch it here locally because, we pay people. So moving on out of that, legislation update, they went into the second quarter pupil services report. Now, this isn't the normal report that they normally talk about. It is actually a report. It is the normal report with answers to questions that board members have made. So let's just dive right into it. Okay. The overview was the student behaviors and discipline data and district-wide discipline support. What's working in the district? They had Principal Hutcherson, Hutcherson. I'm going to butcher that. I did it when I was a planning commissioner. I always call people up to talk. I always butcher their names. But she's from the Center for Achievement. She gave a brief on data-driven leadership. Then we had Principal Mingo from Longleaf Middle. She did the role of MTSS in Culture and Climate. And then we had Dr. Emily Maganault. Did the role of Pathways to Promotion and Supporting High School Students. And that was eye-opening there. And so basically, they went down through here, and you can get these slides up. If you go to the agenda and you go in there and you can click on whatever item it is, which this item is technically 9.2, the second quarter pupil services. So they went and they talked about what's working, what's not working. They talked about their tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type stuff. But they did bring up something that shows. So in 2016, our percent of pupils in poverty was right around 50%, 2016 to 2017. And 2019 to 2020, we hit about 55%. Now, this year, or last year in 22-23, we were close. It doesn't give an exact number, but based on this, we're getting close to 60%. The way this slide looks, if I was to put the lines in there, I'd say about 58. 58%. And that's changing in demographics here in Richland too. So we've definitely seen an increase in poverty in our school system. So with the increase of poverty, as they were talking about, you're going to see discipline issues also. And that just stems from driven data. Now, there's nothing that says it has to be that way, but the overall data, that's what it points to. I can agree and I can disagree upon it. I think you have students that are not in poverty that are worse than some students in poverty, and vice versa. I just think it is a culture and family thing. Because let's face it, different age groups want to raise their kids different. Me being in my 40s, I'm probably raising mine different than somebody in their 20s. Me being from North Carolina and from Rockingham, North Carolina, and the way my family raised me is probably going to be different than somebody that moved here from the Midwest or from Ohio or from New Jersey. Probably got some different values there. And not saying that their kids are going to be worse than mine or vice versa, but they're probably different fundamentals in the house, and we can talk about that. Now, 50.3% of these students that were in trouble, they were expelled. So that's kind of a eye-opening. 26.2% of all the stuff that went in front of the board, they went to Blythewood Academy, and then they had some other things in there. Now, it talked about, as of March 26, 2024, 90% of the students who were recommended for expulsion never made recommended for expulsion again. So 90% of the students that were recommended for expulsion that didn't get expelled, 90% of those kids never made it back. So it means they turned around, they got everything going. Of the 10% of students who were recommended for expulsion, so there's 10% that was recommended twice. And out of those twice, 84% didn't come back. Okay, so that's a good thing. So we got that going for us. And then they went into the level 2 and level 3 frequent behaviors. Now, this slide showed 28,852 students total. And fighting, they had 3%, which is 900 students. Directed profanity, that would be profanity directed at somebody. That was 576 students, which is roughly 2%. Tobacco related was 445 students. We have 1.5%. Drug usage and possession, that was less than 1% at 142. Repeated failure to comply with things is less than 1%. That's 247. And threats was less than 1%, 214. So let's look at the fighting. 12%, 112 out of the 900 of fault. They were the repeat offenders. The direct profanity, 17% of that 2%, which is basically 102 out of 576. They were repeat offenders. 54 out of 445 with tobacco products, they were repeat offenders. The drug usage possession, 3%, which was 4 out of 142, was repeat offenders. Now, I'm going to say this, even though we had the drug usage and possession of 142 students, and then, again, you had 4 out of those 142 that were either caught again, that's disheartening. But the fact that whatever we've done with that tiered resolution to help combat this, they didn't come back. So that's a good thing. And then 23 out of 247 for the repeated failure to comply, and then 5 out of the 214, 11 out of the 214 for threats. Now, those are level 2 and 3 frequent behaviors, and those are what I call drastic behaviors. And you can look at this, and I've been looking at this stuff for years, for the past 2 to 3 years, but I've been looking at it way back, as far back as I can find data. And not just in our school district, but any school district that has that out there, just kind of see. And to tell you the truth, this is not just a Richland 2 problem. This is a Charlotte-Mecklenburg problem, which their numbers are way higher. It is a Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a Tallahassee problem. It is a Augusta problem. It's just it's just a problem. So now level 1 frequent behaviors, the cut in class, 1,200 students cut class. Okay. 403 who cut class, they did it again. Okay. Disrupting class. Basically, you had 1,408 that disrupt class. Inappropriate behavior, 1,015. Profanities, 622. And defiance is the great number of 1,371. And we're not going to go over the frequent because, I mean, you know, these slides are there. But ultimately, we have kids come back. But it's the only one that was high was the cut in class. 34% of those kids still did it. And then the next highest was disrupting class at 25%. Then everything else dropped down to 19, 16, and then defiance is at 22%, which is understandable. You know, that's just defiance. That word explains itself. Now, what they've done to try to do this, they've done positive and nurturing school environments. They've done student supervision, high-quality teachers, which Richland 2 is doing a great job of getting a hold of. Reintegration support, research-based interventions, academic and behavior, non-academic school connections, and parental support. And the Richland 2 core values, you know, belonging, learning, continuous improvement, and joy. That's what they're instilling in these kids. You know, and then they show the behavioral matrix in the school handbook and all that stuff. And then they roll down into the Richland 2's multi-tiered support system, which meeting the needs of all students academically, social behaviorally, social emotionally, and then we go into that. So tier 1, you know, that's 80 to 90% of the population. That's universal interventions. That's that easy stuff. You know, a kid don't agree, they scream, they're just defiant, they don't want to do something, and you try to prevent that by teaching them at an early age so that later on in school that they don't do that sort of stuff. And, you know, they could be a transplant family coming out and moving into this area, and they had issues wherever they were, and it brings it right back, and it's up to us to use the tiered approach to get them back what I consider under control to learn. All right, because that's the ultimate goal of this school district, is to ensure these students learn so they can be successful members of our community later on, so that when I get too old to do anything, they're our future doctors, our lawyers, our store managers, our realtors, our everything that we need to make this world go around. That's our future school teachers, future governor or state house or senator, or who knows, might even be a future president out of Richland 2. We don't know. So they talked about that, and, you know, the tier 1 is the 6 R's of the classroom management, and they talked about the school and class expectations and routines and procedures. Now, routines and procedures is a good thing. So the school improvement council I'm on at Round Top Elementary, we come up with a thing every year, and it's to help. And it's like, avoid candy for a day, go to sleep early, go to sleep on time, do your homework, you know, have a good meal, eat a good breakfast. It's simple stuff like that that can help adjust that tier 1 issues before they get to school. So that's a good thing. And we do hold prizes and things like that. The student that gets the most of them completed, and, you know, it's an honor-based thing, and we get them out. And they put their name in a hat, and we pull out. And this year we got some great stuff going out to them, and that's taking place right now, because I serve as the vice president for a school improvement council at Round Top. I tell you, it is eye-opening to see, though, when you look at the data, how many students do it, and then when you talk to students or you talk to parents, and they say, well, you know, we didn't really do it. And then you get some parents say, oh, we do this all the time. It was easy for us. Like, we can knock out the whole bingo card in one day. That's kind of my daughter. The only one she's struggling with is the no candy, because she loves candy. But, you know, we got that. And then tier 2, for learning behavior interventions, that is more of a targeted approach. So the tier 1 is universal, the tier 2 is targeted, tier 3 is an intensified individual. So basically it's tier 2, just a lot more structured. And then tier 4, that's special services outside. Okay. And then, you know, they talked about disciplinary issues, and factors influencing disciplinary actions are always age, behavior, discipline record, impacts of others, safety, disabilities, aggravated circumstances, and mitigating circumstances. So with that, you can have one of the things they have the disciplinary actions, and those disciplinary actions roll out to loss of privilege, detention, basically work details to do some things in the school, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, alternative placement, which would be like Blythewood Academy, and then expulsion where you're out. And those tier 3 things, like if they brought a weapon or something like that, they got to be out for 365 days, okay, before they can even come back into school. They went over a lot of information in here, and one of the things that they did talk about, though, they talked about kids that could have been expelled, but they were put in a certain program. And the thing that the program did was it allowed parents to allow their students to take 2 classes. And when they passed those 2 classes, they could go on. But they had to do things such as, they had to talk to counselors. They had to have... There was a whole list of stuff, and it's different for every kid, so it's hard to say. But, I mean, they had to go through counseling, and they had to do certain classes, and they had to do community involvement or internships and things like that, and that seemed to work out. However, there was something that really struck me weird and was really concerning, is that when they offer this to those students, and they're offering it to them all, they haven't turned anybody down. It's the parents that are turning this program down, and they're keeping them out. That's one of the concerns. Now, some of these parents are taking them and enrolling them somewhere else, not in another school district, but in a different, like, privatized school, so that they can get this and graduate instead of going through a state-sponsored school. That's that parent's prerogative, and if that's what they got to do, that's what they got to do. But it was kind of eye-opening. It really was. So one of the things they did talk about student strategies of how to do this. So they do Mindset Mondays, SEL weekly rotation, mindfulness mornings, mentor groups, clubs, flexible seating, music, classroom, safe space, SEL toolbox, positive behavior parties, and goal setting. And, the classroom safe space, they talked about that. And that's where students, if they feel that they're getting ready to explode, they can just go over there, and the teachers can either leave them alone or they go talk to them, however they got to assess that situation. Because remember, behavior situations are, they are definitely student driven. You can't do the same thing for one student as another. It just does not work. So that's why it's very a subjective thing. Discipline is subjective. And then, they also do things for staff support. So to give the staff support to know how to do things and give them a toolbox themselves to do things, they do a student watch list, Motivational Mondays, book studies, de-escalation training. That's a good one. Trauma-informed care training, personalized PDs, conscientious discipline, counselor push-in support. Now, I understand a lot more of this because my wife, she is a RTI, which is reading interventionist. And a lot of times, it is done... That is to help those kids that need to help. And some of those kids, in some cases, as you find out and you try to do things with the school improvement council, some of them are behavior, but it's so minuscule that that's why they're falling behind. So when they correct that behavior, and we help come up with ways to correct that behavior, or fun ways such as, if they do that bingo card, the top participating class is going to have not a slushie, but a ice pop party or something like that on a playground. That's just one of those things that we do. And some of those kids, it just takes a little bit of a push and a little bit more love from an RTI person, and they can help. Okay, so it just takes that little push, and that's all it takes. And then the next thing you know, they're out of RTI, and they go on their merry way, and they're graduating and being successful students. And then we do things, and they talked about this also, the family and community engagement. That's where the School Improvement Council at Round Top, that's what we try to do. We try to get the families involved with this, with that bingo card, because, there's certain things kids can do in school, but there's a lot of things kids can do at the home also, such as, they do SEL Parents Night, student-led data conferences, parent circles, community coffee and conversations, and quarterly events, and there's one coming up on the 25th. That's the vaping and gummy thing. they got that. So when they talk about, they talked about a lot of things, and the one thing that helps is the support of teachers. I'm one of those parents that I believe my student, or I believe my child. Wholeheartedly, I believe them. However, we know childs have big imaginations. So when you say go sit over there, they're thinking, oh, well, they made me put all this stuff up, they embarrassed me, and there's a whole thing other than go sit over there and calm down, but it's very strong out, elaborate scheme, and the Flintstones come and got me in the car and rolled me over there. Like, it gets there, so you got to learn how to pick out that stuff. But the ultimate thing into helping behavior issues in school is giving these teachers the support that they need when they discipline. And that comes from the support and education at home. So one of the issues is, and I know this by subbing in Richland too, when I did that, was that you would have students that would continuously interrupt the class. And you'd put them at the wall, and what I did was I would move the desk and put it over there, out of there, and they would sit there, they would look at the wall, they couldn't talk, they couldn't do nothing, and that worked the way I did it. Shout out to one of my teachers, Mr. Moorhead. God bless his soul. He was my fourth and fifth grade teacher for social studies. He was a Vietnam vet, and he definitely helped me when I wasn't the best student ever. My wife is a teacher, so I was rebellious. But look where I'm at now. Okay, so supporting those teachers, that's the big thing. Finding out what's right, what's wrong. Now, I know what some people are going to say, well, teachers aren't always right, and teachers. You are correct. There are bad actors out there, but I wholeheartedly believe there is good teachers out there that will find a way when they find out they have bad actors to get them out, because there are teachers that care, okay? There are teachers that care, and there's teachers that are scared to do anything else. But lately, they've been voicing their opinion more in public because they feel that this school board is willing to work with them a little bit more. So that's a good thing. Now, they also talked about the pathways to promotion. That's where that thing I was talking about, the high school students, and they take those two classes. And here, I'll just read out, what is Pathways to Promotion? Pathways to Promotion provides a caring educational environment for high school students who have been expelled and whose expulsion have been held in abeyance. The program enables them to earn high school credits and develop skills that allows them to graduate or successfully return to their school. Okay, so the program expectations are a student and parent guardian interview. They complete coursework for the required promotion and graduation. They participated in counseling, and like I said, the 40 hours of work or community service. And then they go back and they graduate. So that's a good thing. So in 2017, 2018, that's when it was, that's when this program started. They had 6 enrollees, and they recommended 6, they had 6 enrollees. In 2018, 2019, 6 and 6. 2019 to 2020, they had 7 recommended and 5 enrolled. And 2020 to 2021, of course, we know what that year was. I don't go with any numbers in that year. It was so skewed. They had 2 recommended, 2 enrolled. Now, in 21-22, after COVID, when that's where we've had a lot of issues. There was 34 students recommended, but only 15 enrolled. 34 recommended, 15 enrolled. 2022 to 2023, 20 recommended, only 13 enrolled. And in 23 to 24, since I forgot what that date was, I think it was March 26th of this year, we've had 33 recommended, but only 16 enrolled. That's why I was talking about that disheartening fact that a lot of these students didn't take this program. So congrats on all those speakers that come up to talk about all this. So what I see in the discipline issue is finding ways to support our teachers, making sure that the language is put out there so it's consistent upon all the schools. So it's taught at a early age and it runs through. Now, Dr. Moore talked about how she's instituted this as a program. And that's what I wholeheartedly believe that I wanted to push out to the schools when I'm elected. Dr. Moore's already done that. So now it's up to the school board to work with Dr. Moore to actually, attend meetings and attend conferences along with these teachers that are attending these conferences to find a way to better that program, to find a way to help these students even more. So, there's a lot of disciplinary issues that pop up that are so simple to fix, but the language isn't there to help fix it. So if we can figure that language out so that it's across the board, we can always do that. So if they move schools, we got it. Now, after that, that was pretty much the end. And then we rolled into the other thing that always happens. They talked about the next meeting, what's going to be. All right, I'm back. So as I said, I shoot everything in one whole video. I got a phone call which froze up the camera, but actually it didn't freeze it up. It just froze it up on the screen. So let's just dive right back into it. So that's why you're going to see a little cut back to this. So they started off with the agenda and call to order, approval of the agenda. The public session will be recessed. They'll go to executive sessions to talk about student appeals, student admission requests into the adult education program, breach of contracts, ratification of personal recommendations, ratification of administrative recommendations, ratification of administrative multi-year recommendations, employment recommendations and certified releases, and then they come back into public session. They'll have their inspirational moment, Pledge of Allegiance. They recognize, at 5.1, they're going to recognize state and national award recipients. They're going to go into the consent agenda, which is the approval of the consent agenda, the approval of minutes from previous meetings, the classified employment release and in-district transfers, and then they will have public participation part 1. And then they will go to voting on executive items, which is student appeals, student admission requests, breach of contracts, ratification of personal recommendations, and so forth that I talked about above that. And then as needed items discussed in executive session if they got to make a motion on something else that was talked about. Then they'll move to items 9.1, which is the 8% bond resolution. I cannot wait to hear about that. The unfinished business will be the budget update. The new business, no action requested, will be policy revision for BHC, which is board/staff communication. The agenda items, and then they'll go into the agenda items for the next meeting, which will be the draft agenda for May 7th, 2024, regular scheduled board meetings, and then if needed, public participation number 2, and if needed, executive session number 2, and if needed, voting on executive session items for executive session number 2, and then they'll have the board and superintendent comments and adjournment. And that's pretty much the whole meeting in a nutshell. Now, I know this video is going to be a lot longer because there was a lot of information. This was almost I want to say it was like 4 hours long. I wholeheartedly believe that the voting system that is used in Richland 2 takes up a lot of time. I think these meetings could be shortened a lot by not using that. But I understand why they use it because it's a documentation on their agenda that they can do. So it's pretty neat how they do it. I just think it takes a while. So I think a lot of these motions, I would love to see that if a board member is going to make a motion, if they were the ones that could submit the motion up. Because they could make the motion, have it typed out, and just submit it up automatically. It pops up, they vote. I don't know if that's possible with this software or not, because I do know they have somebody sits off to the side, the administrative assistant, that's what they do. Or if they could actually use that administrative assistant to tally up roll call votes and then put the motion in as they're discussing other things, and then put the vote, who voted what, as a roll call vote. I don't know if that's possible, but it's something worth looking at to shorten these meetings, because there's oftentimes that they have computer problems, and then you wait, and then finally the board chair goes, okay, let's just do a hand vote, and they do the hand vote, and they move on, and then towards the end, the adjournment, they do that quick vote, and they put it on there, and then it gets updated later. So I wholeheartedly believe that can be done. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it can be. I know that's like a double saying, but there's always a way to make things better. I don't care. Nothing's going to ever be perfect in this world, and there's always a way to make it better. And here's the thing. There's sometimes where you can make it better by going back to an older way of doing things, because things change, and you might have to go back to an older way and then start to build a different way out. It happened in the military. There's a lot of times you get to a base and, this is the way we always done it. Oh, this is not the way I want to do it. Let's try to find these. Well, we tried that didn't work. Okay, well then let's try this, and let's try this. Okay, now let's try the way that didn't work after we've done these 2 steps, and then it works. And then next thing you know, you got a whole new process that is way better than the original process, only because you got new blood, new life into that base through a PCS, which is permanent change of station. That's where you move from one base to another. And then whatever leadership position you have, whether it's a section chief or flight chief or something like that in the Air Force versus a commander or whatever it is in the other branches, you just make the process better. And then, because no base is ever the same. I don't care if you work the same aircraft, is never the same from base to base. It's not. When I left RAF Lakenheath, which is in the United Kingdom, the first time, and came back for my second tour there, things had already changed. It was more, they kind of went back on some of the things we've done, because they've got new equipment and new procedures on newer equipment, and so they had to go back to what was proven instead of expanding. And then we started expanding again, a different route than what I originally wanted to do when I was there the first time, and then it turned out to be better than my first time there. So we always got something that can go forward. Now, that's not just the only portion I want to talk about. The disciplinary portion that we went over with, it's very disheartening to see the amount of students that we have disciplinary issues with. It's also very hard, as when I substituted, to see students that would act up, and you would do what you do, and then they act up so much, but the parents don't get involved to help stop it. There wasn't much you could do. And then some parents are, that's my baby. Okay. And I understand that's that parent's baby. But there's got to be a way to do that, because we cannot keep putting kids in with other kids that are not disrupting, and it's taken away so much time. And that's up to the administration to figure that out. And it's been that way since probably the dawn of time, because I remember when I was in school, I remember my mom as a teacher. She had her hands full. Okay, there was always kids acting up. I was one of those kids that acted up. Okay, but they found ways to get it done, and then towards the end, I was good. Joined the military, moved on with my life, and I was bored. So I'm wondering if some of these students are actually bored, because there was a lot of things I would do, and I'm like, I don't want to do this because I'm bored. Like, it's not that I didn't want to learn it; it's just I read it, I knew it, but I was bored with it. So I wonder what that. And this is more of the wondering portion of what I think about. I wonder what that has to do with some of the discipline. I wonder if some of these students actually knows what's going on. They just don't want to do it. And when they go to test, they just click buttons because they don't want to do it. But they actually know it. I wonder what percentage that is. And there's got to be a way to measure that. Basically, just give them the end of course test and see what they do. Let's say if they darn well ace it, they're probably bored, and that's where a lot of this disciplinary issue comes from. Boredom. Because it's not what they want to learn, because they probably already know it, so they don't want to waste their time. Let's take my son, for example. Super smart. I mean, definitely got that from his mother. But, he reads all kinds of things. And I mean, like, he read the whole Harry Potter series in like a week or two, something like that. You give him a book of 800 pages, he reads it in a day. He reads that stuff. He loves history. He loves science. He loves math. He loves to read. He loves to do anything but his homework. After he reads and learns, he wants to go to the baseball field, and that's understandable. He loves the history of baseball. He loves the history altogether. He loves politics. He loves law. He loves all the stuff that I like. And it's kind of weird because, it's apple tree. If you see him and I shave this beard off, you would be like, that is your son. There's no doubt that is my son. I just wonder how the boredom sets in with those students, because with him, I've told him, I said, I understand you're going to know a lot of this stuff and you're going to be bored in some of these classes, but you got to do the work. And I've explained to him how to be how to be successful with doing things you don't want to do, but you got to do it because it's there. You don't want to take a bad grade because you just didn't want to do your homework, because you already knew it. You just didn't want to do it. So you got to take that, and you got to put forth the effort to make sure you make a good grade, especially when you're in honors classes. I mean, you just got to do that. And when you're taking a second language such as Spanish, you got to put it in there. He goes to Blythewood Middle. He loves that school. I love that he's there. I love that he's willing to learn and wanting to learn. There are certain times where he forgets to do things, but he is a 7th grade student learning. This is really the second year where they are moving around, and he's in a lot of honors classes, and he's in advanced math. Basically, he's taking his high school math right now in 7th grade. And so there's a lot of expectations on him, along with performing on the ball field, which is not something that I have imposed upon him. He wanted to play baseball. I really wanted him to swim or something else, but he wanted to play baseball. And he's got all that he does. And God bless his soul, he gets it done. Sometimes he's got to have a little push and a little redirection, but we get it there. So I wonder how, that boredom does affect, because I can see when he's getting bored how he wanders off. He doesn't disrupt in class, which is a good thing, but at home I can see him wandering off. Now he does get it done when we buckle down and we get it. It might take him a lot longer than it should have, but ultimately teaching that from start to finish and making sure you do good, that's how we do things in our house. But if these students are bored and they're not doing it in school, and then they get home and don't want to finish it at home, that could be where some of these disciplinary issues come from for that tier 1. And I'm just talking tier 1. Tier 2 and 3, that's something totally different. You're bringing tobacco, guns, knives, drugs into school. That's totally different than being bored. I mean, it could have a play in it. It could, but majority of the people that act up in class are probably bored and don't want to listen to the teacher. And we got to, as parents and as a community, we got to instill that is one of the persons that they should listen to the most. And then we got to ensure that we have the right teachers in there. I'm not saying teachers are bad, and I'm not saying teachers are good. I'm saying there are great teachers, and then there's people that just get a paycheck. It's the same thing in the military. There's great leaders in the military. Then let's take enlisted in the Air Force. There's E9 is a chief. In the Air Force, you'll hear people say, yep, he was definitely an E9, which means he wasn't a leader. He wasn't a chief. Chief, to be called a chief, master sergeant, and be called chief, you got to earn it. You might be able to test, and you might beat the board, and you can become a E9, and you're E9. But to be a chief, that is an earned distinction. That is a level of respect that everybody respects. You just can't go above that. So the same thing happens in school. We got to teach kids, and we got to find those teachers that are willing to go that extra mile, and not the extra mile outside their work area, but while they're there, they should give it their all. And there's different ways of doing that because it fits different people. Because if I was a teacher, I'd be one of those teachers, I come in and I leave. However, while I'm there, I'm going to, just same thing when I coach baseball, I'm going to put direct input to each student that I need to in different ways. That's just how it's got to be. So, with our pay schedule above, we get to attract the best of the best. We get to give them programs to help these students to become the best of the best in the state of South Carolina and in the nation. Because ultimately, college costs a lot of money. And if these kids want to combat in college, they need to have the standards and grades and the willpower and the resources that they need to, A, get scholarships to help pay so that they're not in debt when they come out. Or if they don't want to go to college, and let's say they want to go do a trade or a certification, so that they have those avenues to also get those scholarships. So we got to find a way to do it. And I'm not saying teachers aren't. There is a very minute few that are not. And it's not for us to find out. It is for those other teachers out there that knows when somebody's not doing something to help try to get them in the right line. Because every teacher, nobody becomes a teacher for the money. Let's face it. They have a heart of gold. Okay? And then sometimes we don't know what happens, and it turns out weird. I mean, and you just seen it in the news with over on Bookman. I think it was Bookman. Don't quote me on that. But you seen that the special education children that were hurt. I don't agree with that. And those people should never teach, never be around kids ever again. I'm drawing the line in the sand right there. You can either like it or not. And other teachers, if they ever find a teacher doing that, that's how they should get it out, get it to administration, because that would empower the teachers. That would be us giving them support to find out the bad actors, to make sure we always have great teachers. And I know I'm probably going to get hammered by some teacher group or parent group or somebody else out there for saying that, but ultimately there are bad actors in everything you do. You have good customer service in some places, and then you go to the same company at a different store and it's the worst experience you've ever had. Same things in teaching. Definitely same things in real estate. Same things with lawyers, same things with doctors, same things with hospitals. I mean, it's in everything that we do. So that's kind of my thought on that. Now, lastly, next week is the Military Child Week, so I'm going to do a separate video on that, so watch out for that one. That should be posted right after this one. But if y'all have any questions, definitely hit me up. And I know I don't answer everything that's on Facebook, because I have a Facebook, I have a Twitter, and it's not just here. I got other companies I do stuff for. I got my own company, but these are my thoughts. These are not debatable thoughts on Facebook. I'm just not going to do it. And the reason why I say that is, typing in Facebook, I can type one thing and it actually means something totally different than the way I'm typing it. But you see it when you're reading it and you're thinking, man, that's not how I see it. But if I was to sit there and say it versus typing it, you'd be, oh, yeah, I do agree with that. Or, no, I don't agree with that. But, putting things out on paper is very hard when it's a thought process like this, because everything that I do has mannerisms, it has different tones of voice, and that all plays into my thoughts and how I present things. So that's what we got. But hopefully y'all have a wonderful Thursday, April 11th. It takes a little bit longer than just a day to get this stuff done. So remember, come the general election, I will be on the ballot. I will be able to file on the ballot around the end of July, beginning of August, to be on the ballot. So just remember Gary Dennis for Richland 2 School Board. And hopefully y'all have a wonderful day. And by all means, if y'all ever need anything, definitely, and I'm not saying from me, but if y'all need anything from your school or anything, reach out to the administration, reach out to your teachers, reach out. Because so many times as I've talked to certain teachers, they say, man, I would really wish that parent would have reached out to me, because I didn't know that was going on. So parents, if you hear that, or if you know somebody struggling, reach out to that teacher, because there's certain things they can do one-on-one to help them out. All right. Y'all have a wonderful day, and God bless.